Before I get started with the video, I just want to give a quick shout out to my friend Marco Sanchez for helping me out with my theory. Me and him were talking about it for a few weeks, and we kind of came to the conclusion that this was going to be my final theory. So thanks, man, for helping me out. So I got a lot of comments and messages from people telling me that the last video was too long, and I do agree it is long. However, I did explain at the beginning that it has to be that long in order for you guys to really understand what I'm trying to say. But since so many people have contacted me about making it shorter, I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to trim it down as much as I can without getting rid of the core evidence that supports my theory. So here it goes. Alright, so in order for you guys to understand the grounds of my theory, the basis of my theory, I'm going to have to play you guys a clip from Season 2, Episode 11, Return of the Reverse Flash, where Harry explains time remnants to the rest of the team. So I want you guys to see this so you guys can understand why I think my theory is correct.
I'm good. Yeah, it's just a lot.
Eddie Thawne died, so Eobard Thawne should have been erased out of existence, right?
Not necessarily. It's is possible Eobard was in the Speed Force, protecting him like a bomb shelter, keeping him alive and his timeline intact. It's what's known as a timeline remnant.
What now?
Here, let me show you. This is now, here, today. This is the time Thawne comes from. This is the moment you all erased him from existence, but since Thawne is from the future, this is where his timeline begins. That's why he's still alive. This Thawne has not yet traveled back in time to kill Barry's mother. He's here now in this time period for the first time. Timeline remnant.
Explains why nothing's changed.
Yeah, it also explains why he didn't know my name, or that we have met before.
To him, you hadn't, not until the future.
If Thawne dies before he can time travel again, will that save Barry's mother?
No, it's not how it works.
Alright, so now that you guys actually heard the clip and heard about what time remnants actually are and what they mean to the timeline, I'm going to go ahead and just give you guys my theory. So my theory is that I believe Julian Albert is Savatar, but I don't think it's Julian Albert, the one that we know. I believe Savatar is Julian Albert's future time remnant. So in other words, Julian, the one that's with Team Flash, is Savatar's younger self. So that would make, Savatar his future self. And I know a lot of people, they kind of argue this and they're like, oh, well, that's not possible. There's a lot of times when Julian and Savatar have been in different places at once. For example, one is episode 15. When Savatar escaped the Speed Force, Julian is clearly with Team Flash at Star Labs. And it confuses a lot of people. They're like, oh my God, how is that possible? That's not possible. But that's what time remnants are. If you guys remember correctly, in Season 2, Zoom was over there terrorizing Earth 2 and Earth 1, sending metas from Earth 2 to Earth 1, while Jay Garrick, a.k.a. Hunter's Element, was with Team Flash the entire time. I mean, we even saw Zoom kill himself, his younger or future time remnant. I'm not sure. They didn't really clarify. He killed his time remnant a few times, actually, like twice, I believe, right in front of everybody so he could sell it, So it is possible for time remnants to be at the same place at the same time or in different places at the same time. So just clarifying that real quick. Okay, so now that I just explained to you guys the basis of how I got my theory and I told you guys what my theory actually is, let's actually dive into why I believe, my theory is is correct. And I will say I do believe I'm about 80% convinced that this theory is in fact correct. So let's get right into the evidence so you guys can actually see what I used to kind of cement my theory. Let's get started. Alright, so if you guys remember correctly, in episode 9, The Present, when Julian is discovered to be alchemy and Barry throws him into the pipeline, he starts asking him questions about alchemy and about, if he remembers being alchemy, stuff like that. But Julian refuses to talk to the Flash about anything. So Barry reveals himself to be Barry, and he shows Julian that he is Barry. After that, Julian starts to cooperate. And he tells Barry the story about how a few years back his sister died, and one night he was at his home alone, and his sister appeared to him and told him about the Philosopher's Stone and that it could bring her back to life. She also told him where to find it, the Hindu Valley, and if he did find it, that she would come back to life. So his explanation for going through the expedition to find the stone was that at that point he would have done anything to bring her back to life. And, that's understandable. When you lose somebody and you someone tells you that there's a way to bring him back, I mean, I would do it. So I don't blame him for doing that. My doubts with this, however, are, well, there's a lot of doubts that I have with this, but my main doubts are, how was Savatar able to use his sister's memory to trick Julian in the first place? I mean, as far as we know, he can only use your memories to trick you when the stone is nearby, or when the stone is at least in the same building for that matter. So it's quite simple, really. I think that he was able to do it because Julian is his future self, or he's Julian's future self. So he has that connection, and I don't know if you could even call it a connection, but they have that sort of, I don't know, attachment, if you will. Like they're connected somehow because they are the same person, just from different points in the timeline. So every person that a Savatar tricks into doing what he needs him to do, there's two reasons usually. It's usually they're metahumans from Flashpoint, and he's using the memories that they had, or the memories of that timeline, of the Flashpoint timeline, to his advantage to trick them into, wanting their powers back, and then eventually doing what he wants them to do. The other reason is that the stone has to be right next to the person, or at least in the vicinity. As we remember with Cisco in the same episode, later in that episode, when he opens the box, and that's because he saw Dante. But if you remember, the box was inside of Star Labs. It was right next to Cisco, so that's why Savatar was able to use his memories against him. So, the only explanation is that Savatar's connection to his younger self was what he used to benefit him, to his benefit, to trick Julian into finding the stone, because at that point Julian didn't know anything about Savatar or anything about that. So, and the stone, obviously we now know that he was going to use it to eventually escape the Speed Force. So, also, if you remember in that same episode, when they're doing the voice, when Julian's doing the voiceover, when he's in the Hindu Valley, at the beginning of the episode, he says, "The voice that once drove me has waned." And I think that the voice he's talking about is Savatar's voice. And, he's not a metahuman from Flashpoint, so the only reason that you would be able to hear him in your head is if you're a metahuman from Flashpoint. So that's why I say that, I believe that he is Julian's future time remnant, because that's the only way that we can explain that Savatar would be in his head and would be able to use his memories against himself. So after Julian finds the stone, he grabs the box, and as he's about to, as he's looking into the box, he's about to open it, he makes a similar look that Cisco makes later in the episode when, he sees Dante, and Dante tells him that they can be together if he opens the box. Same look, same exact look. Go ahead and take a look. And, that's all we see. Now, however, I do believe Savatar tricked Julian into going and search for the stone on purpose. Think about it. Let's say my theory is incorrect. Let's say that I'm completely wrong about my theory. Why would Savatar pick Julian to go get the stone? Out of millions and billions of people in the world, why pick Julian? Why not pick someone who's already in India? He told him that the stone was in India. Why not pick somebody who's already in India? Promise him that they would bring back a loved one. There's plenty of people in the world I'm pretty sure plenty of people in India that have lost a loved one and would do anything in their power to get them back. So, why not pick one of them? Why pick Julian? It would have been a much faster process to pick someone in India. They were already in India. Just get the stone, and then after that, just figure it out. And I believe that that's because Savatar's entire plan included Julian. I think his plan from the start included Julian because it's his younger self. It had to include Julian. He used the connection that he had to his younger self to his advantage, and inevitably tricking Julian into going to search heaven and earth for the stone. I believe he had Julian search for the stone because his plan was to use the stone to break the barrier that was in place by the Speed Force, to synchronize his mind to Julian's mind, his future self's mind to his younger self's mind, so that Savatar, while trapped in the Speed Force, could see everything that Julian was seeing and be aware, basically, of what was going on in the present world while he was trapped in the Speed Force, trying to do everything in his power to get out. So I believe that's why when Julian opens the box, he yells. Because, we can see that in episode, when he does open the box, you can see that he starts to yell. And the reason I think that he yells is because, if you remember correctly, in Season 3, Episode 15, The Wrath of Savatar, when Barry's talking to Savatar through Julian, Barry asks Savatar, "How long have you been trapped?" Savatar responds by saying, "Long enough to lose my mind several times over." So, when Julian opens the box and his mind and Savatar's mind synchronized, I believe that he saw everything and felt everything that Savatar had felt because Savatar's from the future, so he has different experiences that Julian hasn't yet lived. And considering that Barry changed the timeline when he created Flashpoint, those experiences that Savatar lived are completely different to what Julian's living now. So when he and Julian's mind synchronized, that's why Julian yelled, because he started to see, he started to lose his mind, just like Savatar did in the Speed Force. Also, that's why I believe that the blackout started, because Savatar would take over Julian's mind and, to make him seem like the victim just long enough so that eventually he would earn Team Flash's trust, as the victim, which he did. First it started with Caitlin, and then, Barry and everybody else. They're like, oh, he's the victim. He was being controlled by Savatar, but really he wasn't being controlled by Savatar. I believe that Savatar was using that as the basis to earn their trust so that Julian would be his eyes and ears with Team Flash. That's why he knows so much about them currently. Because think about it, when Barry went back and created Flashpoint, he altered the entire timeline. He created an alternate timeline. Even when he reset things, it was a completely alternate timeline in which things that happened originally didn't happen anymore or happened differently. And we've seen that throughout this whole season. So the reason he synchronized his mind with Julian was so that he could see and be aware of what's going on in the present world while he was trapped in the Speed Force. Alright, so on episode 12, Untouchable, after Iris gets attacked by Clive Yorkin at the Barry in her apartment, Julian begins to blame himself, saying that, if it wasn't for him being controlled by Savatar as alchemy to create those metas, Yorkin wouldn't have done that to Iris in the first place. Anyways, after all of that, Caitlin is finally, they convince Caitlin to freeze her arm so that they can stop the decaying from spreading and she doesn't die within like 5 minutes. She decides, she agrees to do it, but while she's doing it, she loses control and becomes Killer Frost again. If you remember, Julian is the one that actually reminds her that she's not Killer Frost, that she's Caitlin. And, she finally, after, talking to Julian for a bit, gains control of her powers and, doesn't become Killer Frost. The important part of this entire episode to me was at the end, when Julian's heading out and he tells the team that there's still one more metahuman husk that needs to be found. He's leaving, and then Caitlin follows him and basically tells him, hey, thanks for, reminding me that I'm not Killer Frost, that I'm just Caitlin, and that these powers don't control me, I control them, And then she follows by saying, thank you for helping save Iris, because, I forgot to mention, towards the end, we saw that he did find an antidote to save Iris from the decaying. So she thanks him for saving Iris from dying. Julian responds with saying, well, I wasn't going to let Iris die at the hands of Killer Frost, was I? Now, a lot of people I know in the comments are going to be like, oh, obviously he's not going to let her die. But why would you say it like that? He could have just said, oh, I wasn't about to let Iris die. Why would he say it like that, though? If I've learned anything about this season is that there's always something hidden behind the text. It's not always as plain and simple as it seems. And what Julian said is not as plain and simple as it seems. There's a reason he said that, and I believe that he said that because Iris needs to die by Savatar's hand. That's what he's trying to say. I'm not going to let Iris die at the hands of Killer Frost because she needs to die by my hand in the future. So, that's what I think. You can take from it what you'd like, but when I first heard him say that, that's what I took from it, because he wants Barry to suffer. He's told him several times, I want you to suffer. I'm going to take everything from you like you took everything from me. So he wants to be the one to kill Iris. So, of course, he wasn't going to let her die at the hands of Clive Yorkin. So we know that Savatar's whole plan revolves around escaping the Speed Force and making Barry Allen pay for taking everything from him when his future self sent him or trapped him in the Speed Force in the first place. Now, in Season 3, Episode 15, The Wrath of Savatar, when the team is talking to Savatar through Julian for the first time, this episode, Barry asks Savatar, who are you? Savatar responds with, I am the future, Flash. And now, a lot of people have gotten crazy over this and started making all these crazy theories about, oh my god, future Barry is Savatar. First of all, let me just say this. That doesn't make sense, because how can you trap yourself in the Speed Force? Whether you're a time remnant or not, that just seems illogical. Why would you trap yourself in the Speed Force? So that kind of debunks that theory, but if you want to have that as your theory, that's totally fine. I respect that. Just like, people will respect that I have this theory, so that's totally fine. If that's your theory, that's okay. Anyways, so what he's really trying to say, though, from my perspective, what he's really trying to say is, I am the future like the future self of whoever I am under the armor. That's what he's really trying to say. And then he says Flash. So he's directing it to Flash, because this whole time he's been talking to the team. This, he directs it to Flash. So that's why he says, I am the future Flash. There really should be a period there, but I can see why they put the comma to confuse people, which, it's understandable. You always want to give it a little juice so people start making their own, guesses. Now, that's really been a whole confusion this episode. So in episode 15, The Wrath of Savatar, Barry and the team are having a conversation with Savatar through Julian. Barry asks Savatar, when do we meet? Savatar responds by saying, not long from now. You're there when I become who I am. Barry tells him, so you're saying you're this way because of me? I caused you to get your speed? Savatar responds with a little smirk, saying, oh, no. I created myself, Barry. Only I can bring out my true greatness. So this part is actually the most important part of this episode to me, because what Savatar's essentially just told the team, Barry and the team, is that he creates himself. Now let me explain this. Savatar needs to escape the Speed Force, and we know this. But this whole time, we have thought that, or he has made us think that he needs to escape the Speed Force to kill the team and then eventually kill Barry, which is partially true. That is in some ways that is partially true. That is his end game. He does want to kill the team and kill Barry. However, if you remember, like I said, he is a future time remnant. He can only do so much until time eventually catches up with him, and we know this because of what Eobard Thawne told Barry in episode 1, Flashpoint. What happened was the Speed Force was protecting Savatar from all the ramifications of Barry creating Flashpoints. So when he escapes the Speed Force, he has a limited amount of time until the Speed Force sends the Black Flash to go and kill him, because he broke the laws of the Speed Force. Savatar's goal was never to just escape the Speed Force and kill them. His goal is to escape the Speed Force in order to give himself, aka his younger self, Julian Albert, back his speed, his powers. Because he did say, I created myself. Think about it. When Savatar escaped the Speed Force towards the end of episode 15, he could have easily killed Barry. He could have easily killed the rest of the team. He didn't have to wait to the future to kill Iris. He could have killed her right then and there, right in front of Barry, killed the rest of the team right in front of Barry, and then followed by killing Barry himself. And it would have taken him less than 5 minutes, I think. And then he would have finally had his revenge. But he wants to see Barry fail to save Iris. In order to do that, he needs to be around long enough for that to happen. But he won't be, because since he broke the laws of the Speed Force by cheating the system and, using the stone to get out, and Wally in the process. So now the Speed Force is going to send the Black Flash to kill Savatar, and the Black Flash will succeed. So before that happens, Savatar needs to give his younger self back his speed so that his younger self can finish what his older self started, what Savatar started, which is getting revenge on Barry by killing Iris, the team, and finally killing Barry himself. That's why Savatar made Julian alchemy in the first place, to protect the one thing that he needed to go about his revenge, which is a future. In order to get his revenge, he needs to secure his future. If his younger self would have been killed at any time before he could get out of the Speed Force, his future would cease to exist, because the Black Flash would have gotten to his future time remnant and killed him. Similar to how Eobard Thawne kidnaps Eddie Thawne in Season 1. He does it for the sole purpose of guaranteeing his own future will remain intact. That's why Savatar made his younger self alchemy, to have him close at all times. Close enough so that when he got out of the Speed Force, he could give him his speed back. And even if the Speed Force sent the Black Flash to kill Savatar, which will happen, he had already succeeded in giving his younger self back his speed. So that wouldn't matter to him anymore. So next, when we see episode 16, Into the Speed Force, when Jessie goes to find Savatar to fight him, or I guess that was her plan in the beginning, Savatar says, Jessie, quick, I knew you would come. Jessie says, how did you know I would come? Savatar responds by saying, because I've already lived this before. However, that is a lie. He is from the future. He is a future time remnant, so he is from the future, but he's from the future in the timeline prior to Barry creating Flashpoint. So when Barry created Flashpoint and reset the timeline, it reset. So everything that he knew was reset. So it's not the same. That's not what happened in his past timeline. The reason I say this is because if you remember when Jay told Barry in episode 9, towards the end of episode 9, the present, he told Barry, just as there are infinite Earths in the multiverse, there are infinite possibilities to the future. It's always bending, always changing. Every decision you make creates another alternative future. The future isn't written. So what Savatar's basically telling Jesse is that the future's written. I already knew you were going to come, but that's not true. A lot of people were probably wondering right now, how did he know she was going to show up then? If you remember correctly, Julian was in the room when Jesse made it clear to the rest of the team that she was going after Savatar. So that's how Savatar knew that Jesse was going to go there. Because like I said earlier, Savatar and Julian are synchronized. Everything Julian sees, everything Julian does, Savatar sees it. Alright, and we're down to the last piece of evidence that I have for this video. So if you guys remember correctly, towards the end of episode 16, after Barry had successfully gotten help from Jay to get Wally out of the Speed Force, when Cisco is opening the breach to the Speed Force for Barry and Wally so they can get out, Julian is literally right next to him. Asks him, do you think you can reel them in? Cisco says, I've never felt this much harmonic feedback. It feels like the Speed Force is about to, and then it cuts off. Speed Force shoots out like blasts of energy and shoots Barry and Wally out of the Speed Force. Now, at first I didn't think much of it. At first I was just like, oh, well, he's just asking him a question. Then I looked closer to it. I repeated that scene like 5 times. Everybody else in the group, everybody else, Team Flash, is, just standing around because the Speed Force has really no effect on you unless you can vibe like Cisco and you're opening a breach to the Speed Force, or 2, you're a speedster, or 3, you're Julian and you're Savatar's younger self, so the Speed Force knows that you're Savatar's younger self. So he doesn't actually finish the sentence, but I think what he was gonna say is it feels like the Speed Force is gonna suck me in, but really the Speed Force isn't gonna suck him in. It was trying to suck Julian in, because immediately after we see that the Speed Force blasts out the energy and in the process blasts Barry and Wally out, Julian literally hides right behind Cisco. Like, I'm not kidding. He literally hides right behind him. He's like almost crouching, and he's hiding right behind him because he knows that the Speed Force knows that Julian is Savatar's younger self, and Julian hides behind Cisco to avoid being sucked into the Speed Force before Savatar can give him his speed. Alright guys, that's gonna do it for this video. That's basically all the top evidence that I have to, point the finger at Julian being Savatar, even if it is his future time remnant. I do believe that his future time remnant is Savatar, and his main goal is to give his present self, the Julian that we know, his speed back in order to secure his future and eventually get his revenge on Barry and the rest of the team. So if you like what you saw and you want to see some more, just give me a like and a subscription, and let me know what you guys think in the comments section. Also, this is a condensed video, like I said, so if you want to see the full video with all the evidence, I will let you know right now. It's 41 minutes long. It's extensive, but it's very, very detailed. I have everything on there from episode 1 to episode 16, which is where we're at now, excluding the episode 17, which was really just kind of a filler, if from my perspective anyways. So yeah, just that if you guys want to see the full video, go ahead and go watch that. It's in my channel, but this will be the condensed one for people who don't want to watch 40 minutes of video. I understand that. Yeah, that's it. Thanks guys.